What's up? It's me, Matt the Aborted Soul, and I finished my biology homework, so I've got some time to blow. Ashley's sleeping, so I'm gonna pass out here in a little bit. It's 38 minutes past the time where I should be unconscious, but I'm gonna take a look at an email I got. I got this from somebody named bloodshed1516. He starts out by saying, I would like to say that the Bible has been proven to be the, and in all caps, most accurate piece of lit till this day. It has proven such things as the world being round, the existence of the existence of dinosaurs, and yes, God to be true. But let's just take one step at a time. Okay. You got a lot of backing up for that to do, but let's continue stepping with you here. I will walk with you. Okay, first off, I'll start with the Old Test. I would like you to explain how people in the day and age of the Old Test would know anything about paleontology, astronomy, meteorology, biology, anthropology, hydrology, geology, and physics. My answer would be by looking at the world around them. The Earth being round was established by looking at sticks and the lengths of their shadows at different positions on the Earth. That's how the relative size of the Earth was guessed, to incredible precision, as it turns out. But ironically, this book and religions like it are what caused the burning of the Library of Alexandria, not to mention the destruction of Ionia, which would have probably taken us well past the stars by now. But, you know, and what's like 4,000 years? I mean, hopefully nothing. Hopefully nothing. Maybe we've gotten some time to learn about ourselves so we won't wipe ourselves out in a nuclear holocaust. But let's continue. Even those who wrote it are not the originals. How did they know about this? You're not making sense. The Bible contradicts itself in so many different places. If you want to go to, if you want to read about this, you can probably go to Skeptic's Annotated Bible or Skeptic's Annotated Quran, or Skeptic's Annotated Book of Mormon, or anything like that, .com at the end of each of them. You can even look them up in Google, and they're a great resource. It's like a step-by-step community effort that talks about all the crazy, ridiculous bigotry and violence and nonsense and family values, blah, 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 that are involved in the Bible. So, I mean, the Dead Sea Scrolls date back to about 2,000 years BC, and even if they had not wrote them, is still pretty impressive. What, that old paper exists? Okay. I mean, it just seems to me that there's no possible way they would know anything about these things unless a greater being told them directly. Alright, let's just say that no being told Newton directly about gravity, okay? And it took our species an incredibly long time to see it. That doesn't mean that any of our facts that we got were divine intervention. Because you're unimaginative enough to think that people a long time ago could have come up with these ideas, which are crude at best. And you could interpret the Bible any way you want, and I would argue that they're not even there. But let's just give you the fact that they're there. So what? That doesn't prove the divinity of the book. If you could prove to me that they had the plans for a complex supercomputer that we'd not developed yet, back then, with no help of any of the stepping stones, something that transcends science. If you could prove to me that science was, in fact, transcended empirically, I would be absolutely convinced. I would say, wow, there's something to this Bible. And that wouldn't even prove that there was a God. It could be aliens, it could be super intelligent human beings with psychic powers, it could be almost anything. But it wouldn't be science. But you haven't even knocked down science yet. Like a regular observation. I'm not talking about like laboratory white coats and beakers. I'm talking about people who look, hypothesize, test, and then record. Okay. The New Testament contains 27 separate documents that were written in the 1st century AD by eyewitnesses of the life and works of Jesus Christ, and which chronicles first-hand testimony to what they had seen and heard. Okay. Isaac Asimov wrote a bunch of books that had first-hand testimony to travel to Venus, Mercury, Mars, and they were fairy tales, just like the Bible. Also, the first 4 apostles in the New Testament are derived from one that was in fact an interpretation of dreams it was. Look into any amount of biblical history that's not directly tied to the lifeblood of the church and funded by people who have bogus degrees. Like, really look into open biblical, untainted biblical history. You know, Bible historians are real scientists, or at least, you know, real historians to me, as opposed to, like, you know, anyone that is subjective views and just makes up their own shit. But let's continue on. Okay, 2. The existence of Jesus Christ is recorded by Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. Okay, look into this Josephus thing, who was born in AD 37. He was born in AD 37, but when did he record it? And he wasn't talking about Jesus, he was talking about his brother, and even the validity of that document is disputed, and one document talking about some random guy who happened to may or may not be one of the thousands and thousands of Messiah figures that popped up during that time. If you even look at the prophecies in the Old Testament, the giant archaic book of animal bloodshed and violence and jealous, destructive gods, about fairy tales that couldn't have possibly happened. But if you look into that, it doesn't fit. A lot of the New Testament was bent to try and make this life fit it, like Jesus of Galilee, oh no, Jesus of Nazareth. Anyways. 3. The Roman historian Cornelius Tacitus, AD 112, referred to Jesus Christ and the Christians in Rome when he wrote about the region of Nero. So he may have referenced one possibly historical, possibly fabled character. In a lot of books by a guy named J.R.R. Tolkien, he references continuously Frodo Baggins, for instance. And yeah, I could say that he lived, you know, in Hobbiton, and you know that doesn't prove anything. But let's move on. Even looking into this, I'm sure it's just a giant house of cards. Writing from Jewish rabbis in the Talmud and other Jewish writings refer to Jesus Christ, i.e. his hanging on a cross. He wasn't hung on a cross. If you look into the history, he was nailed to a crux, which is a stick. He wasn't nailed to a cross. The whole idea of cross thing, the physics of having holes in your hands and then they try to divine this is your hand and stuff like that, it just doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't. It was through his hands. That's what they said. And even if you're going to try and, you know, selectively pick Jewish words for hands and translations and mistranslations and stuff like that, if you're going to backpedal a little bit, and at first you're admitting that there's errors in your Bible, but when you backpedal, historically in Rome, what they did at the time period that Jesus was around is they nailed you to a stick, and you hung like this, which is entirely physically possible, which is why the Jehovah's Witnesses don't use crosses. Because they've you know, looked at the evidence of that and said, wow, Jesus wasn't nailed to a cross, he was nailed to a stick. So, yeah, I mean, even if your evidence is built in biased, ridiculous arguments, okay. Claiming that he was born a virgin, implying his birth was probably illegitimate, blah, 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 blah. The word virgin was mistranslated. It was for young women, but you already admitted that there was mistranslations in saying that he was nailed to a cross, which talks about hands. You can't nail anyone to a cross by their hands or they'll fall off, so it would have to be wrists according to you, and mistranslation. Okay. 5. Almost all major religions, those for and against him, capitalized him, this magical being that you haven't defined, acknowledge the existence of Jesus Christ. For hundreds of years his existence was widely accepted by George Washington's existence as George Washington's existence is accepted today. Well, just because it's accepted doesn't have any bearing by the mass populace, doesn't have any bearing or not on whether it was actually true. They also accept that there was a flood. Lots of people accept that there is this big flood, not the entire world, and not rational scientists or anyone that knows anything about geology or biology, but, you know, a lot of people think and thought very recently that if you step on a crack, your mother's back may in fact be influenced. Don't go under ladders, and mirrors breaking is bad luck. You know, people still, like, the most ridiculous shit, like rabbit's feet, and there's more prevalent examples, but I'm not going to get into it. So, okay. Jesus far above any record of anyone who lived on earth. Okay. So, he's really popular in religion. He catches people's ideas. Of course he's going to be recorded a lot. Okay, but that's not what I responded. This is what I responded. The Bible is the most accurate? Alright, 2 words. Immaculate conception. Never in water into wine, parting of the seas. There's zero evidence of any global flood. There's been a lot of independent floods, obviously, and ice ages and the heating and cooling of Earth and low oxygen content at the beginning where there couldn't be life. But let's just go with this 6,000-year-old thing. And there hasn't been any evidence of any global flood at all. You might as well say there was a global gathering of rabbits that held baskets full of eggs, and, they marched and danced around a big tree with a star on it. And that's, it's as provable because there's no evidence. And you would expect lots and lots of evidence of a global flood. Let's see. And it's logistical, it's a logistical and not to mention a physical impossibility to even get every species of North American insect onto an aircraft carrier, much less every species of just rhinos with enough food to support them for a week onto a ship that existed before modern shipbuilding. The Bible is filled with animal blood sacrifices and crazy hocus pocus, like multiplying fish and water into wine, blah 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 blah. Please don't attempt to walk up to me with this rhetoric with a straight face and tell me that it is accurate. It's not. It's not testable. It's not replicable. And most of all, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. If you weren't raised and your brain wasn't pickled and steeped in this bullshit, you'd step back. And if you saw it, you'd be like, blood sacrifice? God needs animal blood to satisfy his lust because he's God. Of course, he could just be okay with anything. Like, you decide to have sex with your wife in the ass, or suck a guy's dick, for instance, or if you're a girl, lick a cunt, or any of that shit. God could get over it. He could love everything and anything about you, I think for me, that's what real love is. But, he has to, so it's his will, for some reason, that he needs animal blood. Read your Old Testament. It's an ancient tribal religion on animal sacrifices, you crazy fuck. No, I will not eat his flesh and drink his blood with you. This is a completely crazy and nutty concept. You need to let off it. Seriously, re-examine your beliefs, because if you're, it's one thing to just believe bullshit and keep going. One of my friends, who I'm not going to say who it is because she'd probably prefer not to be mentioned, but she said that the object of life isn't to be right. It's to enjoy yourself. Or, it's to follow along your own path, something like that. More probably your own path. I don't want to misquote her. But the object of life is not to get it right. Now, that could be true. There's no empirical object to life on whether or not you should be right. But claiming that right isn't wrong is provable. And that's empirical. And that's what you're doing. So, I appreciate that you are emotionally attached to this issue. I do. I really do. I feel for you. It's if someone was going to try and compare, for instance, Ashley to be the hottest girl to someone else, obviously it's completely subjective, but, if they wanted to use polls or, something, I would be very emotionally attached. Now, there's no empirical way to prove this. It's complete nonsense to even try. But, I would be emotionally attached. Now, if I was emotionally attached to something empirical, like, let's say, Pluto being a planet, Pluto, by the way, you will always be a planet to me. Fuck you, people who defined Pluto out of existence. You're a planet. My very energetic mother just served us 9 pizzas, motherfucker. Pizzas. Because it's Pluto. Anyways. Yeah. I appreciate that you're emotionally attached to this issue. I really do. I do. But that is a problem when it comes to an attempt to make a rational decision about it. Mental diversion and selective evidence grabbing, like closing your eyes and picking and choosing and looking and peeking and grabbing, but not looking too closely, just grabbing what supports you, can't get you anywhere good. It can't, and it won't survive peer review. It never has. Please, get more than just selectively educated on the subject. It's good. That's really good advice. Believe it or not, get more than just selectively educated. Okay, best of luck to you, but don't insult me with this kind of half-baked pseudo-historical crap again. Please. And it's signed Matt. So I'm going to send it right now. And let's see. Just some info is what I'm titling it. Send message. And it's sending now. So this is what I have to say to this guy. Honestly, dude, bloodshed1516, you seem like a person. You don't seem like a good person. You don't seem like a bad person. So far, I've just seen a person who believes, who obviously doesn't think critically when it comes to the origins of life and our universe or history of one man that lived. Think critically, like really examine outside the box and look at the box from all different angles and compare and contrast religions. Try and understand what's going on in your universe and stop believing in stupid fairy tales. Like, how come you can be selectively critical about religion, but anything else in our society, you really have to back your shit up, or you look fucking foolish. And sorry, I apply it across the board. You look foolish. This isn't something subjective. The origins of life and the existence of a man and his divinity and all this stuff is provable. It is. And it's supportable or it's not supportable. And this is completely unsupported nonsense. You're building a house of cards, and I just blew it right over. So, hope you have a really good night, Bloodshed. Peace out, and have a good night.